And happy Halloween. I appreciated when Sharon was doing her prayer, affirmative prayer, that she talked about creativity and fun, because one of the things that's very much on the agenda today is how joy shows us our way to our divine purpose. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for choosing to spend this time with us. And today we complete our whirlwind tour of Edwene Gaines' 4 Spiritual Laws of Prosperity. And so before I dive into the 4th law, which is commitment, I want to briefly remind you of the first 3. She started with the law of tithing, which is our way of affirming God is our source. The second law was goal setting, which reminds us that if we don't set specific, clear goals, we never know if we achieve them or not. The third law was forgiveness, which reminds us that unforgiveness only hurts us and keeps us from being able to experience and know the fullness of the divine as us. And then today, I'll talk about the 4th law, commitment to our divine purpose, what it means and what it doesn't mean. So common hour thinking says that our divine purpose has to be some big, hard, fancy deal that makes us famous. But what if that's just a story? Many of you have done the worksheet, Who I Came Here to Be, at some time in the past, where we each list down 5 to 7 real or imaginary, living or dead, famous or normal people we admire, and then think about the qualities that those people express that are what we admire about them. And when we start looking at the things these people have in common, we come up with fairly easily, 3 to 5 qualities that those people share. And those qualities, if we follow this practice to its conclusion, those qualities are the values that we have come here to express, how we have come into our human incarnation to be, and how we show up. And the most recent time I did this assessment was in August of this year. The people on my list, don't judge, were Gandalf from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek Next Generation, one of my undergraduate advisors, a grad school professor, Pema Chodron, a writer friend that I very much admire, and a service provider who gives really, really, really good value every single time I see her. So you can see 3 of these people are kind of famous, 2 are kind of imaginary, and 4 are real people who are unlikely to ever be big name famous. But when I look at their similarities, they were smart, they were caring, they were joyful, they were very human, they communicated well, they were competent, and they were focused. And these are qualities that I believe I'm here to embody. And in living those qualities, I have the opportunity to show up as my divine purpose or my God self. And every single one of us has this same opportunity, though your list will probably be a little different. And even if you had the same people, the same exact people on your list, the qualities you picked that you admired in them would probably be different. In fact, looking at my list again today, I realized that I must not have been feeling terribly creative or inventive or productive that day, because those qualities are also present in those people. So I can see my list, my expanding to include creativity and joy and fun and aliveness and participation. So I'll put a link to this practice, this exercise in the newsletter. next week, if you haven't done it recently or haven't done it at all, it's also always useful to be reminded of who we've come here to be, because it isn't necessarily what society says. And we get to decide, right? It's up to us how we show up in the world. So back to Edwene and her book. The first question, which I really thought was quite a thought-provoking question, is what in your life are you absolutely 100% committed to? What are you committed to being or becoming without an escape clause or a way out? Edwene committed in 1976 and lived her whole life in service of her big idea. And that was, if you've watched her videos, you'll hear her say this, that she would be 100% responsible for the transformation of the abundance consciousness of planet Earth. Did she succeed at her divine purpose? It depends on who you ask and how you define success. Did she work on it her whole entire working life? And even though she's retired now, is she still working on it? Yes, she is. Did she make a lot of difference for a lot of people? You bet. She even made a difference. She made an impact to those of us who have been working through her book this past month. Even though for some of us, it was the second or third time through her material. So a quote from Edwene: "The truth about you is that you are a spiritual being, living in a spiritual universe governed by spiritual law. You came to this planet to play at the highest level that has ever been played. You came to play at the level of Gandhi or Dr. Martin Luther King or Mother Teresa, at the level of every great and wise soul who ever made a difference. You came to play with the big kids." And then Dr. Holmes wrote in the Declaration of Principles, "We believe in the individualization of the spirit in us, and that all people are individualizations of this one spirit. We believe that heaven is within us, and we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. And lastly, we believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete freedom from all discord of every nature, and this goal is sure to be attained by all." So take a breath. And if the yeah buts are rising up inside of you, yeah, but I'm not that special, right? If the doubts and worries and anxieties and fears rise up and say, but I don't know what I'm here to do, and I'm certainly not as important as any of those people, I call hogwash on your doubts. And if we weren't recording, I'd use stronger words than that. Each and every one of us has an impact on everyone we see, know, talk with, email with, text with, smile at, frown at, support or don't support, encourage or don't encourage, every single day of our lives. Even people we help or don't help, or let them help us, or decline to accept help. Every one of us has an impact all the time. And we get to decide what kind of impact that is. So what happens when we actually commit to showing up consistently as the divine, as us? The universe conspires to support us. Whatever that means, whatever it looks like, no matter what, no matter how, no matter who, no matter when, no matter where. We choose, we decide, the universe conspires to support us. I have dozens of stories that illustrate this, and you probably do too. Sometimes the support of the universe looks like somebody showing up to help us and provide us with something we need. Sometimes it's discovering, like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, that we had what we needed inside us all along, and we didn't know. We just had to tap into it. One of the stories that Edwene told in her book was about a woman she called Mildred. Edwene wanted to go see Halley's Comet, which was only going to be visible in the South Pacific, which meant if you were going to see it, you just about had to be on a cruise ship. And Edwene didn't have the money herself to go on the cruise ship. So she's like, how do I do this? How do I make this happen or create the possibility of it happening? So she called the cruise line and she said, hi, I want to do a prosperity cruise to the South Pacific. How many paid travelers do I need for you to give me a free berth? And they said 18. Piece of cake. She arranged the trip and knew she would have 18 people show up. The cruise was $3,000, which back then was a huge amount of money. And the deposit to hold the spot was $1,000. Mildred came up to Edwene after a talk and said she was going on the cruise and handed Edwene a folded check. When Edwene looked at the check, she realized it was for $10, not $1,000. So Edwene tried to talk to Mildred that it was really $1,000 down, and Mildred was clear she was going. She just didn't have $1,000 yet. And so over the weeks until the deadline, she kept sending Edwene checks of little dibs and dabs, $3, $4, $5, $8. Once a big check for $12.50. That's $12.50. And by the deadline, when Edwene had to have the deposits for her 18 people, Mildred had sent in $97. And Edwene had her 18 people. So Edwene called Mildred and tried to reason with her that, it wasn't going to happen for $97, and let her down gently. But Mildred wasn't having any of it. She said, Dearie Pie, I understand perfectly. The problem we're having is not that I'm not understanding you. It's that you aren't understanding me. I am going on that cruise. So Edwene kind of chickened out at the last minute in the face of such absolute clarity when nothing in the physical world would substantiate it. She had $97, that was all. And then 2 days before the trip, and this was in the 80s, the 1980s, a wealthy woman in Birmingham who had paid the full fare called Edwene and said she couldn't go and offered her place to anyone who might. So Edwene called Mildred and said, you're not going to believe what I'm about to tell you. And Mildred said, you don't have to tell me. My bags are already packed and waiting at the door. Can we be that clear and committed in the face of all apparent argument and disagreement about the good that we wish to claim, the good we wish to show up as? Can we be that clear? That's just stunning to me. What are we willing to claim without any doubt? How do we wish to show up and tell that naysayer that lives in our heads to just sit down, because it's not in charge of us? This is not the only story in Edwene's book. It's just a really fun one. And I remember a story from Holmes, from one of his biographies. And I went looking for it yesterday without being able to find it. But basically, it kind of goes like this. In the early days of the Institute of Religious Science, 100 years ago, banking practices were not as well defined as they are right now. And the ways that nonprofits were expected to handle donations were not as clearly spelled out. Holmes used to get the donations that he got when he was giving a talk and he'd just dump them into a brown paper sack without counting them, without worrying about receipts, without, paying any attention. It's just the money would come in and he'd dump it in the bag. And then when anybody needed to buy something for the Institute, they would reach into the money bag and they'd pull out the money they needed to pay the bill. Holmes was 100% committed to teaching the science of mind, and there was no room in his mind for anything else. And it didn't. There was nothing got in the way. He spoke to more and more and more and more people. They kept having to find bigger and bigger auditoriums for him to talk in because he was that committed. So I want to talk a minute about this crazy idea of divine purpose or divine plan. I've already said that the world, the collective unconscious, sees this as some big fancy thing that will make us famous and make us feel important in the eyes of a lot of people. What if divine purpose is nothing like that? What if it's something you do that you're especially good at? And importantly, that it's fun for you to do? What if it's something that you'd commit to doing for the rest of your life and won't ever stop learning to get better? What is the thing that wakes you up in the morning and says yes? Edwene wrote, "Divine purpose is a process and not an end result. We follow our divine purpose when we do that which brings us joy." So I'm not talking about like giddy excitement, like riding a roller coaster, but I'm talking about that soul-feeding joy. We all know what that looks like, right? What is it that you do that brings you that feeling of soul-feeding joy? And then Edwene made a list to show some of the possibilities to expand our imagination. Running a business, shooting a basketball, growing African violets, making go-karts, baking cookies, building dollhouses, sharing beauty by making art, or making an art gallery or a website to display and sell art. Maybe it's making music or singing or recording or producing music. Maybe it's reading. Maybe it's sending get well cards or writing or listening or sharing ideas. Maybe it's baking or making a really fabulous cup of coffee. Maybe it's home repair. Maybe it's connecting people to each other. Maybe it's connecting people with what they need. Maybe it's reading to kids or teaching kids to read or encouraging kids to read. Maybe it's holding babies at the hospital or working in hospice. Maybe it's taking care of animals or picking up trash. It's never about shoulds or have tos or ought tos or sacrifice or martyrdom. Any of that stuff is garbage thinking. What brings you joy? What is fun for you and satisfying and contentment making for you to do? Your purpose expresses the divinity, that divine life living in, as, and through you. How does it, the divine life, show up as you? Before I close, there's a quote from Stephen Cope's Great Work of Your Life that I read earlier this month, and it deserves repeating. I have come to believe that Dharma gives us the one thing we need to be fully human. Each one of us must have one small place on the globe where we can fully meet life, where we can meet it with every gift we have. One small place where, through testing ourselves, we can know the nature of life and ultimately know ourselves. This domain, this one place that's uniquely ours, is our work in the world. Our work in the world is the one place where we have the opportunity to wake up. So I want to close with 3 short pieces from Rumi, Coleman Barks translation. You know all 3 of these almost well enough to repeat them with me, probably. Number 1, out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. Number 2, today, like every other day, we wake up empty and frightened. Don't open the door to the study and begin reading. Take down a musical instrument. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Number 3, the breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the 2 worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. When we recognize and own and live into our divine purpose, we live in joy. We live in enthusiasm, in theos, in God. We live in life and let life show up through us, as us, in us. And in doing that, we bless ourselves and bless each other. Thank you. So I want to roll into the prayer. And I want you to contemplate some piece of your life that could be, I'm not even going to make you claim it right now, but could be a piece of your divine purpose, how you experience and express joy and delight and fun and aliveness. While I speak the words, I know that one life, that one light, that one love, that one whole and holy presence that I call God lives in, as, and through me, and in, as, and through each beloved. And each one has the opportunity perpetually to express and experience and explore more of this holiness, this wholeness, this God nature that lives in, as, and through each one. And I know the gift already is given, and each one of us gets to open the gift and see ourselves as that divine presence. And as we do this, we benefit and our world benefits, because the amount of goodness, the amount of liveliness, the amount of compassion and joy and delight expands. And how fabulous it is to be able to recognize we turn the face that we see toward light, toward love, towards joy, towards harmony, towards order, towards peace, towards goodness. So I celebrate this opportunity that each one has to add to the love of the world, the love in the world, the light in the world, and the life. What a delight and a joy it is to be alive and well and participating in this marvelous dance of life. In great good, I relax, allow, and let it be. And so it is.
Not, no.
That's not what I wanted.